Just remember looking in the mirror and being like, I don't even know who this person is. Like, I who are you? And I was really angry with myself. I was eating. I emotionally ate. And that's why even in those moments, with clients every single day, I've been there. I've been exactly in your shoes. It's a dark place.
It's Body Smart's Coach Anna.
She gained 50 pounds and lost her mobility during pregnancy.
Then began the long journey back to fitness.
It's the first time I tried to go to the gym afterwards. I was covered up, very nervous to go back in. I actually had this gentleman walk over to me at the time, but he goes, "Oh, that was my rock bottom," and that was where I was like, okay, put your knowledge into use now. And I just started to coach myself. I don't have a single picture with my daughter that first year. That's something I really regret. And if anyone's listening out there, take the picture.
Take the damn pictures, yeah.
I'm gonna cry. Oh, that's so sad.
Revealing some things I didn't think I would reveal today.
Hi, I'm Jaymie.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the Body Smart Podcast.
And today on the podcast, we've got our very own Coach Anna. So it's a pleasure to have you on, Anna, because you have got not only 13 years of incredible coaching experience, but you've also got your own fascinating story of fitness, weight gain, weight loss, your own struggles with kind of the mindset around all of that and confidence. So I think it's going to be great for the audience to hear how your journey translates into how you work with clients, and also to share some of your client stories, because there's some amazing transformations that you've been part of. So let's start with your own journey. Could you talk us through your fitness through your life? Have you always been fit, active? What happened?
Absolutely. So thanks for having me here today. Excited to share a little bit about my own story. So I'd always been really athletic, always played outside. I was a bit of a tomboy. I played soccer, or now football, I would call it, living in the UK. Played for about 12 years. So fitness, that's where I started, always a big part of my life. Eventually working in gyms and then wanting to qualify as a PT and start there, which I did when I came to the UK 15 years ago. After that, when I got pregnant
Was that the first job that you done when you come to the UK?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I qualified and became a PT, started PTing, built up my own business here.
What type of gym were you working in?
I was working in, I think it was a Fitness First, and then a Fit for Less, and then a David Lloyd's. I worked in a few different gyms, kind of just a
Chain type.
chain type, yeah. And then I worked in a personal training studio, a private one,
Yeah.
eventually, before moving on online.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I'd always been really fit, and then I fell pregnant. So obviously I'm thinking, great, this is fine. I will continue my fitness throughout, my nutrition, all the things that I know, I'll put them into practice. But then I developed SPD, which, Stacey, I believe you experienced.
Yeah, but nowhere near as bad as you.
Yes.
know. And so if someone's listening and they aren't quite sure what we're talking about, it's when your bones and your pelvis start to become a lot more movable than they really should be, because your ligaments and tendons become a lot more flexible with the hormones that come around in pregnancy. It's actually known as pelvic girdle pain now.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah. Because it's not just your pubic symphysis that's affected. That's the bone at the front, which originally, or the cartilage at the front that was originally part of that name. But now that's everything around that pelvic girdle they consider.
Oh, okay. Well, this was a while ago. So this was about 10 years ago. And so mine was particularly bad. And obviously those hormones are released, the hormone relaxin. And it was about 8 weeks into being pregnant. And
Wow, really?
Yeah, really early. So I could hardly walk. So I was on crutches for months, just trying to get around.
Holy shit.
It was trapping nerves in my back. My hips were so displaced that I just couldn't walk. So obviously I couldn't exercise. And I think definitely that's a moment when you realize oh, wow, we take advantage. We take, our mobility,
For granted.
for granted,
Yeah,
sorry.
No,
I was
we really do, yeah.
trying to think of that word, but it was something else. So I did continue to eat like I was as active as I was, was before. And also I'm sitting a lot. And, I did start to feel, I think I leaned into emotional eating as well, just a really hard time, different hormones and things like that. And over my pregnancy, I gained 50 pounds. So after I gave birth, still had 50 pounds, and I'm only 5'3", so I'm not a pretty petite person as it is. So I really, really did not feel good.
So literally from 8 weeks on crutches, and then did that like literally remain for the rest of the pregnancy? Because that's like
Yes.
what, not even 2 months in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter was 5 weeks early, so didn't have to quite go like the 40 or 42 weeks. But yeah, it was the whole time I was on crutches, and it was pretty tough.
What was your recovery like? Did you feel like as soon as you gave birth, everything settled a bit, or?
No, so after that, I was still in pain. It didn't just instantly like sort of go back to the way it was before. Still in a lot of pain. To be honest, I've dealt with a lot of back pain up until now even. I would say in the last couple of years, I hardly ever feel it anymore. But it was a long recovery. There's still some things I'm still a little bit nervous to try, like back squatting and things like that, just in certain things, high impact sometimes, just because you start to get a little worried because, when your back goes, and it
It's
affects
horrendous.
absolutely everything.
And especially because you've experienced what it's like to have your ability to move taken away.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally get that because I couldn't do a lot of things after I gave birth. And if I get the slightest twinge, back squatting for me as well is something that I'm still very anxious about. So I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually for me too.
yeah.
I'm just I haven't back squatted in a couple of years, and anytime I do, I can do it and it's fine. But I have like back pain for like a week, and it starts to like negatively impact other parts of my training. But I can goblet squat fine, leg press, lunge,
Same.
Bulgarian split squat, all fine. But back squat, I'm just like, my physio was like, are you really that bothered? And it was an ego thing. I was like, I like lifting a lot of weight, but then it's just become one of them exercises that I just choose not to do anymore.
Yeah. Same. I just leave it because I'd rather not risk.
I think that's a really good thing to share actually because there's a lot out there. If you go on Instagram and you look at like fitness reels, there's all these girls like doing all these big squats and deadlifts. I literally can't squat or deadlift very well anymore.
Yeah.
And all three of us are like, we don't back squat.
No.
So it's not like a precursor. You don't have to squat to be fit or active. Like there is an alternative for everyone.
Exactly. And that's a big theme I would even say in everything that I think we'll talk about today is there's definitely an alternative for absolutely everything. It's not one way. And a lot of what you see as well, like being fitness professionals, three of us sitting here on, talking and none of us back squat.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really interesting though that you've had that experience yourself. It makes it a lot easier to empathize with clients when they say, oh, I can't do this particular movement or that particular movement. You know how actually for a lot of people, that feels really frustrating and annoying. And it's almost like harder than if you could do everything. It's harder to come to the gym with an open mind and say, you know what, I'm going to try something different and not let it ruin my experience.
Absolutely. Especially when what's in your face is like, oh, to be a fit person, you have to do this, this, and this. So
it also makes you realize, like, if anyone's ever had like a severe injury or gone through something like yourself, you realize how much of a privilege it is to be able to move your body and to exert yourself and do all, exercise can make you feel amazing. And when you have that taken away from you from like a really bad injury or back injury or, what happened with yourself in pregnancy, it makes you, it's like that anytime you get like really sick and when I've like seen you in bed for a couple of days, you just cannot wait to just feel normal again. And I think that makes it really does make you realize like, I guess how delicate you are as well, but also like how lucky we are to be able to move and do a lot of things that we do take for granted.
absolutely.
Talking about that, can we go back to that kind of rock bottom moment for you? Like, was there a moment where you went, right, enough's enough, I need to go and find stuff that I can do because I can't do what I used to do? Or was it like a gradual shift?
It was a little bit gradual because I still suffered in a lot of pain to start with. One thing that I feel like I missed out on was being able to wear my daughter, when you wear them in the carriers, like I couldn't do that because of my back. And I did have a rock bottom moment and I was not very kind to myself upon reflection when thinking about it now. But I had a moment where, it was the first time I tried to go to the gym afterwards. And I remember exactly what I was wearing, this pink top with long sleeves, was covered up, like very just nervous to go back in. And I wanted to go straight back in and start squatting and start doing things exactly like I did before. And I just remember looking in the mirror and being like, I don't even know who this person is. Like, like, who are you? And I was really angry with myself. I wasn't very kind in the fact that, I had just done an amazing thing and gone through a lot. But at that moment, and then I actually had this gentleman walk over to me at the time because I was in the weight area. And again, this was a while back. So I think now we see a lot more females lifting
Shit has
weights
changed, yeah,
and
definitely.
things like that. But he goes, oh, do you play rugby or something? And I was like, oh, no. And it was just that moment of like, and I was just like, okay, this just isn't me anymore. This isn't, and nothing's wrong with playing rugby. But I think it was just at that time what I feel like he meant by what he said. This was again 10 years ago before, you know, we see a lot more women in the weight area. And so that's kind of where it started. That was my rock bottom. And that was where I was like, okay, like we have to just put your knowledge into use now. And I just started to coach myself from that moment.
So you did it all yourself. You didn't get external help.
Yes. So
wow.
I did it all myself for the most part. Later down the line, I've used coaches myself when I booked photo shoots and worked towards things like that. But yeah, the bulk of it I just did myself.
In terms of, if you don't mind sharing, like your mental health throughout that period, like prenatal, postnatal, like, because that's a lot. Like I know personally how important movement is for my sanity to an extent. Like it really is a reset for me, and I've always been worried if I ever had like such a bad injury, like how I would deal with it mentally. I've always been like, well, if I broke both my legs, I'd get a hand bike or I'd do some, you know, that's how I've almost tried to like protect, like if something happens, I'll find a way. But, you know, I've had a couple of back tweaks and injuries in the past, and it is debilitating, you know, in the sense of, you know, just even moving your arms on an arm bike can feel excruciating in terms of pain. So, you know, how was that for your sort of mental state through that time?
Yeah, it was not good. I'd be lying if I said it was good at all, because that was taken away. My movement was taken away. The things I enjoyed, my job, everything. I sort of, you know, I did gain something, but I lost a lot, and a lot of who I was that made me me, and just how I just got out stress and frustration and anger and all of those things. And so I was eating. Like I emotionally ate all the things and that's why even in those moments, you know, with clients every single day, like I know exactly what I've been there. I've been exactly in your shoes, and it's a dark place, and you're also looking after a little human that and it's a very brand new thing that you're doing, and you have to
And it's non-stop.
It is nonstop.
Yeah. I think that was the thing I found the hardest was exercise would have been for me, same, like my switch off time. And when I couldn't do it, I was just like climbing the walls. But I also felt really resentful. And I think that's often brushed over, that you are giving up so much of yourself. And when exercise is important to you, like that isn't just like, oh, because I like to look good. It is essential for me to feel like me. And I did get really resentful about it, and I would just be like sat in this room, sat on a sofa, feeding my child, watching TV, which we just discussed earlier. Like I don't watch TV normally. I watched the most amount of TV in my entire life on maternity leave because I was like, I literally can't do anything else. I just have to sit here. I don't even like watching TV, but I have to watch TV for like 8 hours straight, and look how sunny it is outside, and I can't go outside. This is bullshit.
Yeah. Oh, so resentful. I mean, I felt exactly the same. It is wild how much your life turns upside down. But then take away that component of not being able to move very well either.
Yes. And even like if I had to pick him up off the floor, I had to like prep myself to pick him up off the floor. Yeah. And you just think, like I used to just do a forward fold to pick something off the floor. Like I'm so flexible normally, and I didn't have to even think about how I moved. And now everything was a considered movement. Yeah, it's not a great place to be in. But how did you tackle it then? Because it's very easy to just continue in that dark place and let that spiral even further, especially if you had found a coping mechanism with food. How did you start to turn things around?
So I think that's when I really had to think about why, and like what my why was and what's motivating me in that moment. And it was that moment looking in that mirror when that man came over and said that to me, and it was just like, nope. I want to make sure that I'm giving my daughter the best example that I can. And so from that moment, that was something that was really driving me forward. And And it started with little steps. It wasn't like I suddenly went out and I was, it took time as well. I think that's the biggest thing. It wasn't overnight.
Which is tough because I think you've got that mindset of, well, I can just go back and just do what I used to do. I think we see this with a lot of clients as well. Like if they've been really active in the past, sometimes you want to go back and just train how you used to train. But, if your body's not done that for an extended period of time, you do have to go back in, and it's frustrating to go back in and like almost like do less.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I actually think it's harder than if you're new to the gym and you have no expectation of yourself. Than if you used to be active, whether it was in college or pre-pregnancy, and then you go back and you're like, but I know that I used to be able to do X and now I can't. That's harder in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. It is harder. It's harder to make yourself like, okay, I can't do that, but I can do this. And that is a hard thing to do. It is to regulate yourself in that way.
But that's a really useful skill to learn. And particularly with clients, I know I definitely use that a lot. And I'm sure you do, of like, if you can't do X, then these are your options to do instead.
Yeah.
So did you find with your fitness journey that was easier than the food side, or was the food side easier?
I actually found them both quite difficult. I mean, I really had to work on both of them, to be honest, because I think, first of all, I did get into that pattern with, I've always had a big appetite anyway, but I've always been super active. I am now a very active person. It's something I've always worked at. So I think both of them I found difficult, but I think fitness, I think that was probably, I guess if I had to really pick one, it was the hardest, because I started out just even going back to like a class, like a stretching class. And then I started to be able to stretch out my back, and then maybe a little bit of Pilates. And then we tried a little bit of spin after that. And it was like, then I could work up to lifting again. And that was tough.
Yeah. I think it's really useful to share that, because I had a similar kind of ladder back into fitness. And I think there's so much out there on social media of people like jumping straight back in after their 6-week check. I literally didn't pick up a barbell for a year. And it was actually a revelation for me, because I realized I don't actually need to work as hard as I thought I did. And I can still see really amazing changes in my body and get that same buzz and just like train my body in a completely different way. But I think there is this expectation of like, you should be able to, if there's nothing wrong with you in inverted commas, you should be able to just like get back to it. And it's so not true.
No.
And it's not necessary.
No, it isn't necessary. Especially when I have a client that comes in that is very like postnatal and maybe only in just after that 6-week checkup, 8 weeks, things like that. And they are ready to go.
Yeah.
Like they are, and I'm like, I have to like demotivate them a little, which sounds weird, but I'm like, we got to pull it back in, because first of all, like you're putting way too much pressure on yourself, and you're probably going to fail, and nothing's wrong with failure, but like you don't need to. We'll work our way up. So we got to like reel them back in. And I always say, like, I'm telling you this from experience. Like I've been there. I know what to do, and I know how hard what you're doing right now is.
You said earlier, actually, you've got a really nice client story, Sarah, who had 2 kids and had to really work hard at that. Would you mind sharing a little bit?
Yeah, Sarah was great. She had 2 children. She had a really like very demanding job as well that she went back to quite quickly. So imagine 2 young children, the job. There wasn't a lot of time for herself either. Especially she found finding time for exercise really hard. And she thought that, okay, I have to be at the gym. I have to be doing this. I have to be doing that. I'm like, no, we can just do stuff with a mat at home next to your desk when you have a break, and we can start there. And we just have to work with what we have and kind of go from there. And she lost almost 50 pounds and has kept it off. And she's just her whole transformation. Again, that's where we started, was just doing stuff next to your desk. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And then we can go from there.
And did she get back into the gym?
She did eventually, yes. Eventually got back into the gym and was able to free up more time. But it was something that took time as her children got a little bit older, and she was able to learn how to create some boundaries with work and things like that.
I think that's a really important part of the whole adjustment after having kids as well, is where boundaries used to sit and what you would accept is not okay anymore.
Right. It all shifts, definitely.
Yeah. And navigating that whilst also trying to navigate the emotional turmoil of like trying to fit in exercise and manage a new relationship with food. It's a lot.
It is.
So where would you say to someone listening who might be in that place right now, where would you suggest they start?
Okay, so what I always say is like, what are you currently doing right now? Like, how are you doing things now? Because you're already, we just want to go a little bit further than what you're doing right now. So whether that be, let's just start with walking. Maybe you're not even exercising at all. Let's start with you're doing 3K steps a day. All right, let's do 5. Let's go there.
The challenge you have though is like most people are going to go, well, I don't want to tell me all the stuff I've got to do so I get the fastest results in the shortest space of time. It's not like, how can I do the absolute most? Isn't it?
And I'm like, again, I know that sounds bad, but I'm going to like demotivate you a little bit and I'm going to bring you back because I want you to succeed. And you'll see that we're going to get there. Oh, we're getting to 10,000 steps, but we just got to be a little bit patient and start to build those habits up, things like that. And then I'll say, okay, nutrition-wise, again, what are you eating now? Let's see what you're eating now and how we can make small improvements on what you're having now. Can we add in a side salad there? Can we add, some protein into your breakfast? It doesn't have to be completely radical. And that's where I start everyone, really.
And with the food side, I know you've mentioned that it was maybe stemming from the fact that you were so active and you ate the same amount, but also the emotional eating side.
Yeah.
What was kind of the triggers for you and what kind of foods did you turn to?
I think the triggers were resentment, boredom, being angry, just not having a way to deal with the stress and things like that. So that was triggering it. And I think also you're just at home all the time with nothing to really, you're busy, but like,
yeah, you're a bit bored as well.
So
you're a bit bored. The
monotonous.
kitchen's there.
Yeah.
The TV's on. You're like, oh, I'll just go have a little snack. And then before you know it, you've done that all day long.
So how, you said you gained around 50 pounds. How long, like when did you, like after you had the baby, like how long did you start intentionally trying to lose that 50 pounds?
So
And then how long did it take?
I started about a year after she was born. I was living like that way for a year. A lot of it was because of my back still and the way I was feeling, but
So were you still having to use crutches a year afterwards?
no,
or?
I did a little bit post pregnancy for a little bit, but then I was off the crutches at least, and then it started to get a little bit better. But it still took a year before I started to lose weight, and then that whole transformation, like 50 pounds, that was like another year.
Yeah. Wow. And if that's because that's a long time to go if you've always been in this like fit and healthy body and always been like a certain weight, and then to have something like completely out of your control, like 8 weeks into a pregnancy, start to shift and change that, and then also carry that 50 pounds of weight for like what 18, 20 months time.
Yeah. So
and then it take another year to actually lose it as well.
yeah.
So what did that look like for you when you started that journey of like losing that 50 pounds? You mentioned smaller steps in the gym, like
I started so then I just went back to like I started tracking my food, and even just when I wasn't 100% tracking, I just knew things I would do is like, instead of I made spaghetti, well, I do like half pasta, half veggies with that. I would just make the small swaps that we say to do. Like it actually is kind of that easy in a sense of just making those small swaps to start with, then tracking food, and because that really works to be able to control it. And yeah, kind of went from there. But
And I know you said that your why was your daughter and like wanting to show her a good example. Do you feel like that you are now in that place?
yeah, I do. I try to now. I actually had a moment the other day, which it's going to sound like a humble brag, but I actually don't mean it that way. And she was at a friend's house, and a friend's mom messaged me to say, oh, she was disappointed because I didn't have any fresh fruit. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. And I asked her about this later. I was like, oh, did you ask for fresh fruit at your friend's house? And she was like, yeah, well, I had biscuits too, Mom. But then I asked for some fruit because balance. I was like, okay, winning.
I think it's okay to have humble brags about those things, because like if we're out for dinner and Nate gets offered different foods, I literally held up to him a cucumber and a chip the other day. For the Americans listening, that's a French fry? Yeah. And he chose the cucumber, and inside I was like, yes.
Those little moments where you're like, okay.
Yeah. But then, because we're teaching them like you can have both, like you can choose. But the fact that he wanted the thing, and he thought cucumber tastes just as great, I was like, that's perfect.
That's a definite win.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think having to go through this journey yourself does make you more aware of the things that you want to pass on. Like, definitely for me, I found like I'm so aware of things that I'm saying around him, or like what kind of food we have in the house, or like, you know, even the pressure. We were talking earlier about like my parents would always make us clear our plates. And then I found it so hard when I was trying to lose weight to just stop eating when I was full, because I was like, this ingrained voice was saying, eat everything on your plate. So I'm like, I'm never going to say that to him. Like, if you're full, that's fine. But it's weird, isn't it? Like, you kind of have to go through that yourself to be able to pass it on.
Absolutely. And I do the same thing. I've always, from day one, I've never said, you have to clean your plate, or I've always been really conscious of the way, you know, I speak to her about food, and I wouldn't say like, oh, that's fattening, or things like that, like really small things, because you'll notice I notice even in clients and even in myself now, like obviously like the 80s and the 90s before that was wild diet culture. Like, I mean, it just is in general, but it was particularly like, I remember back then, and a lot of the clients who come to us, like a lot of the issues that they find have stemmed from when they were young and listening to their mother or their grandmother.
On the TV shows, there's like a like thing where like Monica comes in on like Friends, isn't it? And she's like calling herself fat, and she's like tiny. And there was just loads of TV shows that were calling like women overweight or plus sized. I'm just like, it's just wild. Like from today's standards, like those women are like tiny. You know what I mean?
know.
But it's so it is. It's definitely like generational, wasn't it? And then it's, you know, even still when people go and get a like a low fat coffee, they say, can I have a skinny latte?
Oh yeah. I never really thought of that, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's still like there's loads of foods that are still called like skinny this or skinny that, isn't there? And it kind of just plays into that. You know, they need to bring out like strong coffee, like strong bars.
I agree.
I mean, there's a few things like that, isn't there, that are going more like that. But that's I feel like that has been like a really healthy switch of. There's a lot more women who are just more focused on like being fit and strong and, you know, resilient, and that's those traits are getting more like glamorized instead of it just always being like, what's the smallest version of ourselves that we can be.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like we are moving in a better direction for sure.
Yeah.
Especially with just women in sport, women in the gym, seeing a lot more of that.
Is there anything that you feel like you would go back and do differently if you could do it again?
No, do you know what? Not really, because I just feel like I know everything's like you learn from. So I feel like I wouldn't necessarily go back and do anything any differently. Do you mean as far as my own journey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I guess I would say, oh, I should have started sooner. But again, you know, I had to work through some stuff, and actually it's made me who I am today. So I can reflect now and be like, I'm glad I went through it.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned, and I think this is like very typical as well for a lot of clients, when you kind of hit that rock bottom sort of point. It's often people hit that point, and that's what forces them to take that step. And it's a lot of negative drivers to an extent of like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I feel fat. I don't feel attractive. There's all like, I've got no energy. Like I hate my life, hate myself. There's a lot of that negative emotion. At least it's getting used in a way to like drive action. I know you said there was a lot of negative drivers for yourself in the beginning. Like what were some of them, and when did that switch maybe to more positive drivers? Because I do feel like you can use it as fuel in the beginning, but it's not long term like a healthy driver to have.
No, of course not. So yeah, in the beginning, it was very negative. I was very angry with myself, and it was just the shame and the guilt, and also, you know, I just didn't feel good when I looked in the mirror and things like that. But I think as I started to get stronger, get fitter, get in a better mental space, when I started to be able to exercise more, I could even see that the switch and the way that I was speaking to myself, the things that were driving me forward, wasn't all negative anymore. And it turned a lot more positive. And then it started to switch to a lot more just about those intrinsic things that are going to drive me for the rest of my life, instead of just being those things like, oh, I've got to get in, I've got this holiday, or I've got this shoot, or I've got this thing. And now it's more, you know, again, being that positive example, like the one I use with my daughter, like that's amazing. I want to keep showing her that. I want to keep showing up for myself and for her and living as long as I can for her, giving, you know, myself the best chance at things like aging and things like that.
So what does your fitness and nutrition look like now?
So at the moment, I do a lot of strength training. I usually strength train around 4 times a week, sometimes maybe a little bit more. Right now, I'm really enjoying running. I am a fair weather runner. I love it when it's sunny.
Yeah.
Which means in the UK, we are not all year round.
Yeah, not all, no. But I usually I'll always do some form of cardio as well because that helps me with my mental health. I like doing like stair climbing in the gym or spin class. Usually that's wintertime, I'll be doing that, or just depends on the weather. But then I like to run and stuff too. And
one of your hacks I've seen when you're doing your stair climb is TV show. Favorite
yes,
TV show on?
I save my favorite TV show for when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Any type of cardio like that. And when I'm running, sometimes I'll save a podcast as well, or just something that I'm going to enjoy. So I like bring something that I enjoy to something maybe that is hard to do. And if I can bring those two together, then it makes it a lot more enjoyable, and it starts to become something you look forward to rather than something you might dread.
Yeah, I definitely find with running, some people like music and some people like to listen to something, and I'm in the listen to something camp. But equally, my husband's really weird. Like, he would just go with nothing. I'm like, what are you doing for an hour?
I know.
Like, just thinking.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to be with my thoughts for an hour. It's like, no
But
thanks.
it can be if you ever want to look at like getting your dopamine in like a really healthy place. I think Andrew Huberman talks about this as like go to the gym like once a month like without headphones, or do your regular stair climb without watching a show, or run once. And if you do that like just like once every month, it kind of resets that fact that what you're doing to enjoy it, you enjoy it like that much more. So it's purposefully doing that. But yeah, I think that's the I seen Mark Zuckerberg used to be a big runner.
Yeah.
And he just basically said it just got too much of him because he was just left with his own thoughts for too long. So he started doing more. And I think you find this with a lot of people who are like high performers. If you go and do exercise, you choose like a cardio-based exercise where you can think. Sometimes you don't actually feel like you get that break that you need. So he said he like opted to start doing surfing and jiu-jitsu. And he said because you have to be so present doing the exercise or doing the movement that it actually feels like it not only gives you like the physical benefits, but you get the mental benefits because you get that 60 to 90 minutes where, you know, if you're surfing, you're just worrying about like not drowning or catching the next wave.
That's
or
why I think, you said you started climbing. That's why I like climbing so much, because it's very mental. Like you have to think about the tactics you're going to use, which hold next. Like you can't be also thinking about work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Climbing's good. I enjoy climbing too.
Yeah.
Ever wondered why losing weight seems so hard after you hit 30? You're not alone. At Body Smart, we specialise in helping women like you over the age of 30 to lose 30 to 60 pounds in less than 6 months. Guaranteed. And that's without restrictive diets or endless hours in the gym. Our approach works because it's delivered through customised, direct, one-on-one coaching. Your coach will tailor a fully personalised plan that fits into your life, focusing on sustainable habits, not temporary fixes. On average, our clients lose 5 to 10 pounds a month, and that's not an outlier. That's what you can expect to achieve month in, month out. And yes, these results are guaranteed. Ready to see for yourself? Visit bodysmartfitness.com to apply. Remember, we're here exclusively for women over 30 who are serious about taking charge of their health. Apply at Body Smart Fitness.
So you've obviously got quite an active lifestyle, but you've also still got a 9-year-old daughter and a very busy job. How do you juggle all of that?
So I lean on, you know, having a supportive partner, making sure that I use things like after school clubs and stuff like that. And I'm not afraid to, you know, take time, even if it means like, okay, you're going to have to go to after school club today, but that means I can get a workout in, or I can finish my work so that I can be there for dinner, things like that. Definitely leaning into support systems is a big one. Asking for help when I need it. And I just prioritizing my time. I might need to get up one day before she gets up from school. So I might need to get up and start work and do a work block. So then I can take her to school and then go for a run and then come back to work, but I'm not missing out on my work time, things like that. So
Yeah.
it's just making it sort of prioritizing, my time really well. Also doing things like, batch cooking meals. So I'm not always in the kitchen. I'm not spending time doing that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I definitely use a lot of the same kind of tricks. And I think it's really important to normalize you shouldn't feel guilty for booking time in for you to do a workout, because there's another great quote from This Woman Lifts that we shared a while ago, where it's like, don't you feel guilty for taking time out to do your workout and not be with your kids? And she's like, no, because I'm such a CUNT to them when I haven't had a workout.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And I just think I'm the same. So Nate goes to nursery at 8, 3 days a week, so that I can get my workout in before I start work. And I did feel really guilty about that for a while. And then I was like, actually, do you know what? It's like an extra hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I am so much happier and better to show up as a mum, as a wife, as a friend, when I have had that time to myself. And I was trying to squeeze it in everywhere else and it just wasn't working. So I think if you are in a similar situation, if you're listening, like if you've tried everything and it's not working, then maybe give yourself the grace to actually ask for help from family or friends or your partner, or book paid childcare. It's okay. Like, you're not a terrible mum to do that.
You're also, look what you're showing them.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Like, you're showing
leading
them
by
that,
example.
that you're a good example and prioritizing yourself.
So with that, like, it's that like mum guilt is obviously just a consistent thing that you see with all mums, in terms of like choices that are being made. That's definitely a part. Do you think this is like quite? I'm just making an observation. Do you think sometimes that's also used as an excuse? Like, it's easier to say, hey, I haven't got time, I have to go and get the kids, when there might be other viable options of, like, maybe there is an after school club, or maybe you could ask your partner, or maybe there are other support systems, but sometimes saying that you haven't got the time can actually be masked to some degree as an excuse not to make the effort to get that walk in, prioritize a bit of you time, get some training in.
I would say yes. I think, though, it stems more from they're in their comfort zone. And they have to be uncomfortable to ask for help. They have to, it's comfortable being there and saying, I can't because of this.
I would actually also say it comes down to feeling uncomfortable prioritizing yourself.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of clients who would feel like it was putting their mum out to ask them to come round to look after the child so they could work out. And think that wasn't a justifiable enough reason to ask for their mum's time, because they don't see themselves as a high enough priority. Whereas actually, most people's mums, if you said to them, like, hey, your daughter is really struggling right now and getting an hour of me time would help her out so much, most people's mums would be like, tell me when and where, I'll be there. But I think if you still see yourself down the list of priorities, it's a lot harder to ask for that help or to feel like it's okay to say no to other things.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's going to be person dependent, isn't it? And it's like how much support that you've got, whether you've got family in the area or haven't, and what that kind of looks like. But yeah,
I think it's doing that inner work of like really valuing yourself enough and finding enough self-respect that you will make it a priority. And even if that means to start with, you're the one sacrificing a little bit of sleep to get up early, you're not having to ask your partner to do anything or work or like pay extra childcare, you're just taking the hit. Like, actually, once you start taking those steps and you see the implications of feeling better, showing up with more energy, then it feels like, yeah, actually, do you know what? I could ask for a little bit of help. And this is okay for me to prioritize myself. And it isn't actually having such a knock-on impact as I thought, in a bad way.
Yeah. So I know, like, because Steph has, like, really big, like, people-pleasing tendencies and will put everyone else before herself. I know if we ever had kids, she would probably never ask. But, like, I'm aware enough of her that I would actually try and make her have that time, even though I don't think she would ask. I could encourage that, but she just wouldn't. She probably would just suffer. To be like, you sort yourself out. I'll sort the kids out. And I see that in like a lot of other women who have got like really big people pleasing tendencies, and it is more the case in women, I would say.
I think that's really helpful though, because Reese was really good at that. He would just be like, just go for a run, just go. and not even have an argument with me about, like, he would just push me out the door because I would try and argue back.
Yeah.
Or be like, oh, I've got to do this. Or he's like, just go. And I think mostly because he was like, you'll be nicer to me when you come home.
Yeah.
But if you've got a supportive partner, and I mean, you raised it as well, Anna,
Yeah.
it does make the world of difference, but not everyone's got that.
No.
So it is hard if you're feeling like, I know I need to find time for myself, but I don't have that help. What do you do with clients in that situation?
I think it is like, you know, again, or what can you do and maybe involve your children as well?
Yes.
That's what I do. So things that you can do together, whether it be walks, runs, stuff at home in the living room, especially if you have really little kids, like Steps with Rick. You know, we love that here at Body Smart.
Yes.
And kids love it. They love to like dance around. Like, what can you do with, it's just meeting you where you're at, like what you have to work with. I do realize like not everybody has safe places to go out for walks or the time or have to work multiple jobs or things like that. But there's always something, and something will always be better than doing nothing.
I think actually you made a good point of just doing stuff at home, because there is maybe a perception of I have to go to the gym, and that's not the truth. So if you can find a way of doing something in your front room, maybe even in the yard or out in the road. Like, I go out with my son often, he just runs up and down on his bike, and then I'll just do some body weight stuff on the sidewalk whilst I watch him.
Yeah.
I might look really weird to my neighbours, but they're used to it, so it's fine. I actually remember one time before I had him, I used to set a timer on my phone for like intervals in my run. So I'd run for like 5 minutes, and then I'd stop and do squats and push-ups, and then run for 5 minutes or whatever. And I came across this old man, like it was down this country lane, and I just stopped and dropped and started doing push-ups, and he was just like, are you okay? That's him just doing my fitness. But, you know, whatever works for you, and if that's what you can fit it in, then who cares what other people think?
100%. And that will be a big one, is clients will come in and really, really want to be at the gym, and then it's just not happening. And it's again bringing you back, like, okay, but what could we do at home? And could that fit into your schedule every morning? Or, you know, and if so, let's make that work. Like, that can work.
That's probably the biggest one, isn't it? Is managing that expectation of you are in a different season of your life right now. And if you've got the expectation that you need to go to the gym and do a 75-minute workout and lift weights and feel exhausted, and that's what you're used to training like, and then it's like that's kind of gone, at least now, for a period of time. You know, maybe your partner works full-time, or maybe you haven't got a partner and you've got all these different commitments and you can't do that. You know, sometimes it's managing that expectation, like, hey, I might get like 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there in a day, and do that a couple of times a week. And you know, it is a season, isn't it? You know, of going through and also like you've got a baby, and it's, you know, but also like enjoying that, and not it's tough. It's a head fuck.
It is. And actually, going back to one of your other questions about like mental health during that time as well, is like, don't ruin it for yourself. Don't ruin this special time for yourself, because you're putting too much pressure on yourself to do this and this when your kids are young, or you're in that season of your life, because it's just that it's going to change. It is going to change eventually.
It doesn't feel like it at the time, does it?
It does not.
Promise it will. I had a really interesting stat actually that I wanted to raise whilst we were talking about, you know, making time for yourself, and that whole concept of self-care isn't selfish. And it sounds so easy to say, but I found this like poll online that was done, and 80% of women admitted that they knew taking half an hour out for themselves every day would make them feel better, feel refreshed, like show up as a better person. Only a third of them actually did it. But 76% of them spent at least 10 hours a day caring for other people. And it's just such an ingrained tendency. And I think if you said to somebody, like, can you just add up all the hours that you do stuff for other people, and then you don't think spending half an hour doing something for you is okay, when you really ration about it, everybody's like, yeah, okay, actually, maybe it's fine. But we don't ever do that. We just see it as this standalone thing that we shouldn't be doing, or like we feel guilty for, or there's not time for. So I just wanted to put that out there. And if you're listening and you're in that place of thinking, oh, I don't feel like I can, or I don't want to ask for help, like, just have a think about how much you do for everyone else.
Yeah. And to be honest, like if you don't make that time now, you'll probably be forced to make more time later. And I mean that in the way of your mental health or getting sick because you're just too run down, things like that.
Yeah. So what would be like your best advice to somebody who is struggling to make themselves a priority? Because I know you work a lot with people on mindset. So not this practical stuff we've been talking about, but like what kind of mindset tips would you give somebody?
A lot of times I'll start with getting them to visualize actually what they're after and what they'd like to be and who they'd like to be in the future. Why are you coming here? Like close your eyes for a minute, and maybe even if you're listening, like just close your eyes for a minute. Who is that person? Like, what are they wearing? What are they doing? Like, what does it smell like? Who, like, what are you in that person that you want to be, that you're aiming to be? And then take a piece of paper, and I want you to put yourself in a circle. And then from there, what are their values? What are her values? What does she do every day? What are her habits? What does she prioritize? What does she eat most of the time? Where does she like to do? Right? So then let's look at that. And great, like, well, where do we start? Which thing can we pick now to start with to prioritize now? We don't have to do it all at once. So trying to just show, like, I know that you want a lot, but we have to start somewhere. We have to start living like that now to try to show that maybe.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it, because you could look at that and be like, hey, like this person's prioritizes the health, prioritizes the training, is fit, healthy, and it's like, oh, okay, so if that's who you want to be, do you think picking up the neighbor's kids 5 times a week aligns in that value bucket? Because if you're prioritizing your health and fitness, it doesn't mean that you can't help the neighbor's kids out, but hey, maybe 3 times a week is good, so you can have those other 2 times that you can spend a little bit extra time on yourself. And I think it's just starting to, like, once you get clear on like who the person is that you want to be and what their values are and why those values are important to you, you can start to create a framework of like how, because I think that's a big part of it, is like how can you create frameworks to say yes and no. And for a lot of people, it's often not about adding more stuff. It's about how can we say no more often, especially, I'd say especially for women, say how can we say no to more things to create more space and time so you can actually focus on the things that are actually important to you.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to prioritizing yourself, that feels like this big task. Whereas, like you've described, writing out all these little facets that make up that life means you can see things where you're like, oh, I could action that. And that would be me prioritizing myself, but it doesn't mean what I thought it meant. Yes. So like me prioritizing myself might mean just taking the time to make my breakfast rather than grabbing something on the way to work. And that is an act of showing yourself you're worth it. And it doesn't sound like a big, like people think self-love is writing in a journal or standing in the mirror and saying all this stuff. But actually, actions speak louder than words, and showing yourself each day, I am worth a little bit of time, I am worth prioritizing, can be that small.
Absolutely. And I think just showing that it doesn't have to be this big overwhelming thing, that we can actually just start small and just one thing like breakfast, work off that onto the next thing. And that is still prioritizing you. And look, you're able to do that and nothing is falling apart. So let's start somewhere small and, you know, all the blocks aren't falling down and then we can build on that. I think that helps a lot mindset wise when there's that roadblock of like, you know, I can't do this because of this and I can't because of that.
So with that kind of identity work, did you have to do that yourself coming through your journey?
Yeah, I did. I definitely had to, because I kind of lost myself for a while.
Yeah,
Like I definitely lost myself for a while. And again, you know, going back to looking in that mirror, being like, I don't know who this is. This isn't me. I visualizing the person that I actually wanted to be, the life that I wanted to live, the mother that I wanted to be, those things. And I had to break it down into the small things again. Okay, let's just go back to prioritizing walking every day, you know, as and when I could. Again,
it's so powerful that though. Like I used to think manifestation bullshit. Like that everyone was reading The Secret, like load of shit, like whatever. I should will myself to be having a 6-pack or will my. But like the more I've just got clear on like proper goal setting and like what you're saying basically here of like when you like get clear on like what it is you want and like write it down and can visualize it, like all of a sudden like you've literally just created like a pathway in your head of like that is the target. And then without even realizing, like you just start saying yes, no, and moving towards that goal. And it's like, don't be surprised when that actually happens, because you're just, everything that you're doing day to day, if that is like the goal that you consistently repeat to yourself and you're looking at and you're focused on, like it does just start to happen. And I used to think that just sounds like a load of woo-woo and bullshit, but it's not. Like when you are solely focused, you know, there's like that saying like luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And it's like some of the stuff that's on your way to your goal, you're like, oh, that was lucky. And it's like, or was it? Like, am I being intentional around the people I speak to, the locations I end up in? And you just start getting closer and closer towards those goals.
Absolutely. I actually think I listened to The Secret around then.
Oh, sorry. But you know, I completely believe in the sense of like, if that's the case, like you get clear on the goal and you want to manifest it and you
100%.
think about it and you do the work towards it. It's just like at that time, there was a lot of people who would just like want to like just wish their way into.
Yeah, to be fair, that book is kind of out there, but it was like, I like the idea, like what you're saying behind it, and that is like with the visualization, with like your identity and what you're aiming for, you know, making that map of what you need to get there.
Have you had any clients where that identity shift has been so difficult because the person they were when they joined to the person they wanted to be was just such a huge leap?
Absolutely. My client Casey, she when she first came in, I think the biggest thing that she was really scared of was, but I don't know who I am without, you know, the food. I make food for people. That's what I do. You know, I like to eat. I like to cook all these extravagant meals and have my friends over, and that's what they know me for. And who am I going to be without that? And we had to do a lot of work with, okay, without that, what Casey do you want to be? What other things do you like? What other things are you good at? I guarantee people don't come to your house just for your food or even for your food at all. Yeah. Or even for your food at all. Like they come because of you. And just trying to make her realize like there is life, you know, that is different from this. And it doesn't have to be like miserable and terrible and things like that. And so we did a lot of identity work. And we did these, we called them, I challenged her to do these micro braveries. So what we did is just little times in her day where she could do something a little bit brave, a little bit of outside of her comfort zone that she started to do. And then she'd share those micro braveries with me every day. And then eventually Casey lost 50 pounds and has kept it off. And
amazing.
Yeah.
And I bet she still cooks really lovely food.
And she still cooks really lovely food.
Yeah, I think actually that was something that I can resonate with because I love to host and feed people and make really amazing, delicious food. But I think for me on my journey, it was realizing that can also be healthy. Like you can still make amazing, healthy food and people are like, wow, what is this? It's a flavor explosion. But it's just a bit of a different style of cooking. And that can actually be a really fun journey. So even if you're someone who really identifies as a foodie and food's a big part of your identity, becoming healthy or losing weight doesn't mean you have to say goodbye to that part of your identity. It can just evolve.
Exactly. And that's another thing is I'll challenge clients to what are your top 5 favorite foods? Okay, great. We're going to still include them. But why don't we try and find other ways to make them less calorie dense so that you can enjoy them still or more or every week, right? Mm-hmm. There are ways around it. So you don't need to be cutting this out. Mm-hmm. We just need to find a way that you can include it more. And that's you know, the abundance mindset. Like, what can we add in rather than what can we take away?
I'd say that's like a big thing you've said even before when you're talking about like where should someone start. It was like, it wasn't how can we have less of this or less of this. It was like, how can we add more protein in? How can we add more of this food in? And it's a lot of people always think of like losing weight. It's like less. But often it's just like, how can we add more in, more, and the stuff that you enjoy? How can we just look at different alternatives? And again, having that like open mindset of abundance and just like looking for more to an extent, but more that aligns with the values and the goals that you want to achieve.
And the other thing on that kind of note that I love doing with identity work is let's lean into the strengths that you already have. Okay, so you identify as a foodie. Great, because you're really interested in food and you know loads about food and you're going to want to enjoy learning more things about food. Compare that to a client who doesn't know how to cook, who like maybe has never really cooked for themselves. You've got a massive head start.
Absolutely.
And then when you flip that narrative, people are like, oh yeah, me being all about food is a good thing. Okay, I can do this. So whatever your identity is, it doesn't actually even mean you have to like park it to become healthy. You can like bring it along with you and even make that part of you bigger and more beautiful.
Absolutely. Definitely. and looking at it like you'll get, maybe that's your strength and maybe, you know, that's something that you can really lean into. Whereas somebody else, you're right, like really struggles with that, but they can nail like the exercise part is something that comes naturally to them. And just showing you like, we all have those strengths and weaknesses and that's really normal. And we're going to work on both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one then. What would you say is your weakness?
Oh, goodness. I definitely, I think I can struggle with boundaries. I get really hyper-focused on things, as in like very driven, but to the point of sometimes I'll not put those boundaries in. But that is something I'm definitely trying very, very hard to work on.
As in, you'll go too far with your fitness, or like you will let work take over, or
Yeah, all of the above. Like definitely all of the above. It's like whatever at the moment I'm like, okay, that will become exactly what I'm very hyper focused on at the moment and really driven towards that. It can be a strength, but it can really be a weakness because then something's going to give somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something that I've been trying very hard, especially in the last year, to work really hard on.
Yeah, and I think that's a really common thread for a lot of our clients, actually. Boundaries, very hard to put in place. Mine's kind of the complete opposite, actually. My weakness would be I can be very complacent because I know I can get away with like, only 2 workouts a week, or I can get away with maybe overindulging for a whole weekend, and that's fine. And it's easy for that to then become 2 weeks and then 3 weeks. So I guess it is boundaries, but like in reverse.
Yes.
So I need to be like more firm with myself in terms of like keeping up momentum, because when you do have a baseline of fitness and stuff, you can get away with skipping the odd week, but not 4.
No.
So yeah, boundaries again.
Yeah.
What's yours?
Mine's probably, I definitely used to struggle a lot more with like body dysmorphia. I used to put like a lot of self-worth in terms of like how I physically looked. And that was probably like struggling in school and like being bullied. So like being like a bigger, stronger guy, I was wrapped up a lot of my identity in that being the case. And if I ever like lost a bit of size or wasn't in great shape, I would crucify myself around that. And that was definitely worse. I'd probably say like teens, early 20s. But then, like, sometimes I will just still have this, like, not enoughness of, like, not lean enough, not big enough, not strong enough. And, like, it doesn't matter where I would get to. It's still, unless I just actually change that mindset around it, it's still just not enough. But that's, like, very rare that happens. But
Yeah.
I can actually remember, like, the last time that happened. It was actually in January when I was in Australia. And like Steph was like saying to me, like, God, she was like, she got upset the way I was like talking about myself. And she was just like, I was like, why, what's up? And she was just like, it's just not nice to hear you speak about yourself like that. And I was just, she's like, I haven't heard that from you in like years. So just that still just happens sometimes, but I think sometimes it can be a proxy of other things that are going on in life, and whether I just internalize it. So I'd probably say that's everything else I feel like is pretty. And it's like the opposite of what we're asking is like pretty easy to an extent. Like I don't struggle with my food and my nutrition at all anymore. It's like just autopilot default. Training to an extent, it's just like a part of my life and movement. But that creeps up on me like every blue moon now. It used to be a very consistent thing, but it's still, I guess, there. And
I think that's a common theme though, that those little like demon on your shoulders, they come back when the rest of life goes out of whack. Like for me, the complacency comes back when I'm really stressed, and it's easier to default to like my old identity, which was just wallow and like not do anything. And that was like 10 years ago that was how I would have dealt with a stressful situation, but it's still, that little demon's just there.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe it's the same.
Yeah, I don't think it ever goes to an extent, you know what I mean? And there's also that like idea of like it's not like it's like proud but never satisfied and pushing. You can wrap it up in like motivation sometimes, but then there's such a fine line of like, have you got healthy drivers right now or not? And I've said that a few times, even just like, you know, when me and Steph just like go for walks and just chat about life, in the sense of like, I don't know like if a lot of my self-worth still is wrapped up in like being fit and being in shape. You know, if I lost that, like how I would actually feel about myself. and I was saying to her, I was like, oh, maybe I should just like lose like 2 stone, which is like 30 pounds, you know, get down to like I'm slightly overweight on BMI, but obviously I carry a lot of muscle. I would still, even if I lost 30 pounds, be a healthy weight BMI. And she was like, I don't think you should do that.
That says a lot.
Yeah, so, you know, which is, again, are you masking some of the thoughts by...
Yeah.
Do you think some of that stems from being in the fitness industry? Like for you, Stacey, as well. I know myself, like, do you think
possibly,
some of it is that?
Yeah, it's changing slightly, but yeah, like when I first got into personal training, it was like, or when I first got into training, the only thing I wanted was a 6-pack. I trained abs 20 minutes a day, 6 days a week, and like I can basically not train abs now, and I've just got like constantly strong abs because I've just done that for years. But yeah, that was the thing. Like, it was like get leaner, and that was almost like your ticket into the fitness industry was you being in shape, and you were, I guess, almost like belittled by peers if you weren't. It was like, what do they know? That's changed, I would say, a lot, but it's...
I definitely think it's, like, if I'm really honest, I don't think I would be as on it if I didn't feel like I needed to look a certain way. And when I have those, like, moments of complacency, I'm like, get a grip of yourself because you're supposed to be a role model. And so I don't know it's necessarily like I feel like I need to compare myself to people online or whatever, because I don't, and I don't look like a lot of those fit girls online. But I do feel like I need to be a role model. And I think that's maybe a healthier way to look at it, because I also, for me, a role model isn't eating chicken and broccoli. A role model is balance, and it is finding a way to do all this with a real life and not be obsessed. But there's always this like tipping to which way am I going to go at the moment? Is it like being more on the role model, or is it like, yeah, but it's all about balance. That's my thing, you know?
Absolutely. It can definitely like seep in a little bit. But also I think pretty much, I would say my fitness and nutrition are pretty much on lock now. It kind of autopilot with a lot of things like that, but definitely still, even like I'll still even have days like where I think are like body dysmorphia a little bit of extra pressure you put on yourself and things like that. But
I think social media. I talk about this song a lot on here, which is you should always wear sunscreen. You guys heard it? Yeah, and it's like, it's just like one of the lines is like, don't look at beauty magazines; they will only make you feel ugly. And I just feel like we've all basically got Instagram now, that's just showing us pretty people all the time, and then the filters on top of it, and then AI. It's like, how can you not compare yourself? So that was actually one of the big change I made when I was like, I just like used to follow, like I used to be really into like bodybuilding when I was like 15, 16, and followed all those accounts and followed all these guys on YouTube, and that definitely played into it more, like that consistent comparison of like following all these people who were in like the most extreme shape you could be in the world. It's like, that was the comparison. So I just like unfollowed all of them and just constantly like not interested, and just changed my feed, and that helped immensely. You know what I mean? It's like, it's one of them, isn't it? Like, I think sometimes it's just like not putting yourself in situations that amplify those feelings. Like if you were like going to go sober, probably not a good idea to go to a bar all the time. You know?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like if you wanted to be a really like faithful partner, maybe don't go out and party with all your single friends all the time. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like you're just making life harder. Like if you struggle with a bit of body image stuff, like maybe don't be like staring at perfect bodies every single day. Like of course some of those feelings are going to come up.
Yeah, definitely. Have you had clients that have struggled with body image even after they've lost the weight? And did you find that a difficult transition?
Yeah, I actually found, so I've had, yes, with both. So clients, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, it takes a while for your mind and all of that to catch up with maybe the person that you're looking at in the mirror. And also, let's face it, we're our worst, harshest critic, always. And that translates to myself as well, like even days. And I've done photo shoots where I've prepped for, and I've, really done this dedicated cut for, and I'm not saying that's always the healthiest thing to do either, because you get really lean, maybe to a lean where you're not going to sustain that all the time. And it can, sort of play with your mind a little bit, but yeah, definitely myself, and I see it in clients.
Yeah, I found it took me years to actually understand that I wasn't the big one anymore. And even now, I go shopping and I pick up sizes, and then I'm like constantly having to pick, oh, have you got this in a 6? Because I don't still register that like that is what size I am. And it's been like 10 years. So I think it's really, really normal.
Yeah, I like for years I'd actually go and buy the bigger size, and then I'd go home and put it on, and it was too big. But I just couldn't. It took me a little while after that to properly
Yeah.
internalize it.
Yeah, it's
You
weird,
know?
isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you've done all this work, you can see it in front of you. And I think that is part of that identity still. Like there's still this part of you that's not quite made that shift. Yeah, so I do a lot of work with clients where it's like taking more pictures of yourself. Because weirdly, I find I see my body image differently in a mirror to in a picture.
100%. I'm exactly
How
the same.
weird is that?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
We need to get like a psychologist.
Yeah. Can we?
Because I will literally say to clients, like, take more pictures of
Yeah,
yourself because
yeah.
I promise you'll look way better than you think you look in the picture. And they're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Exactly.
So on this, like, because I know when we've asked about photos of you when you were 50 pounds.
Yeah, I have
you?
none.
Yeah, you have like a handful
Yeah, I've got
if that.
yeah.
And is this the same for yourself at all, Anna?
It is the exact same. The ones that I have, I had to, and that was when I'd lost the weight and I actually wanted to finally like post a transformation. I didn't have any. So I had to ask like friends and family, like, did you catch me in a picture somewhere? And I was able to like find some that they'd caught me in or like just they took and had that they never like really shared with me. But that's the only
Yeah. Or
pictures
I
I
would
had.
just have pictures of like a certain angle that I felt like I looked okay or like just my face.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, but like actual body ones, yeah, they were really didn't have any.
And why? For like both you guys? Like, was that?
Well, one, because we didn't have iPhones with endless storage on.
Right.
And two, because I wouldn't have saved or kept any pictures where I didn't like what I looked like. Like, why would you? Or just delete that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it was like a memorable time or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, because I don't have any.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
it's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean,
I don't have a single picture with my daughter that first year.
Oh,
I have one where I'm holding her, like kind of from here. Don't have a single picture, which is really sad. So if anyone's listening out there, take the pictures.
take the damn pictures, yeah.
Take the damn pictures, because
Yeah.
that's something I really regret. And I guess if I could go back in time, like I won't ever be able to give her that, but I hope to teach her, not the same thing.
I'm going to cry. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. So definitely, revealing some things I didn't think I would reveal today.
Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? It's really difficult because it's I think like I was just saying like how I feel about myself. If I lost that, you feel like you lose a part of you when you lose your identity. If you gain 50 pounds and you don't feel like you're in this different body, it's so difficult to just comprehend in a short space of time, isn't it? But yeah, no, I mean, like, thank you for, even both sharing. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we end on a happy note?
Yes.
I've surprised you with this.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm going to read out one of your trust pilots.
okay.
So we ask our clients if they've had an experience with us to share what it's like to people who are thinking about maybe joining our coaching program, because we can rave all we want. Like, obviously we're biased, we think it's amazing, but to actually hear it from the horse's mouth is invaluable. And I went on our Trustpilot and I put in the word Anna in the search box, and I got like pages to choose from because you have had some amazing clients and amazing transformations. But I really wanted to pick this one because she's like a cheerleader for you. So Danelle said, I've yo-yo dieted for 30 years. I've lost hundreds of pounds and I've been between a size 2 and a size 16. Losing weight wasn't that hard because I could just follow a food plan, but it was keeping it off when I stopped following the unsustainable food plan that was impossible. I joined in July knowing I had 2 vacations that month. I was afraid I would start 5 to 10 pounds heavier if I'd waited till August, but I actually was 5 pounds lighter. Life is complicated and it's always changing day to day, week to week, month to month, but we always have to eat. And with Body Smart, they walk your life with you. My coach, Anna, has been amazing and invaluable. I've learned the best ways to shop, cook, store meals, prepare for events, my lifestyle, challenges, not because Anna spoon feeds me information and solutions, but because she listens and uses her experience to nudge me in the right direction. I've generally been an all or nothing person. So having Anna there to say, you're not failing when I've been frustrated with myself has taught me patience and kept me in when I would have quit before.
Oh, that was such a good one to revisit.
Yeah. And I just think that really tells the kind of coach you are. Like, it's hard to describe in a nutshell what coaching is.
I agree.
But Danelle's done a great job.
She has, yeah. We definitely need to get better at that, but it's because it encompasses so much, and I think that's, if you've never been in that position before, I think sometimes we say like, oh, I wish a client could just like feel how sometimes we feel for a day, because it would just give you such a driver to take those steps. But it really does affect like your whole life, not just how you physically feel and your energy levels and your gut health, but like mentally, you know what I mean? Like, you look good, you feel good, you walk with your shoulders a bit further back, your head's a bit taller, you go for that promotion, you're willing to take on more challenges and risks. It's like, it affects everything, you know, in such a like transformative way. And I know that's like a bit of like a buzzword to an extent, but it really is. And then that over years and decades, you're just on a completely different path.
Absolutely.
And that's the magic of doing the job, isn't it? Like, you get to have such an impact on people's lives in every area.
It is. It's the most rewarding job, being able to be part of, you know, these women's lives and leading to them to a place where they feel like that.
Yeah.
You know.
And I loved like the example you said earlier of the micro braveries and little things like that. Honestly, like opening your phone every day to people's happiness and wins. Obviously, there's an equal amount of difficulties and challenges. It's not all roses. Yeah. But, you know, like, it is so amazing to see somebody shift from every day, it's a challenge every day, to like, hey, every day she's sending me a win. And that's your job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you have been listening today and you think, do you know what, that sounds amazing, then definitely head over to bodysmartfitness.com and check out our coaching program, because we've got a whole team of amazing coaches like Anna who are all real people and they've all been through their own journey. They get it. So bodysmartfitness.com. If Anna's story has inspired you, then take a listen to episode 54 for our top 10 tips to lose weight and keep it off.